I'm not going to research every agency out there. I'm going to pick from the ones I know and always go back to those agencies, people, companies over and over.
I had my friends that are like super cool internet entrepreneurs, and they were like traveling and they stayed with me, and I introduced them to Spindrift, like the seltzer water. And they were obsessed with it. So then they had bought one. They had done like a live stream and were talking about it. And then Spindrift sent them like a pallet of Spindrifts. And I'm like, it was me. Shadow influencer.
My challenge to AI is if you're a company and every single person around you is currently, which they are, leaning into AI, humans become the differentiator.
I'm Margaret Kelsey.
And I'm Devin Bramhall.
And this is Don't Say Content,
a show created in partnership with Share Your Genius. Today we're talking about websites. And I don't remember how this question came up.
It was in, I think, what will be the last episode. We had the little side tangent for a second. Do these things even matter?
Yeah.
Everything is changing. What does that mean for our focus on websites, particularly in B2B?
Yes. So the question is, do websites matter anymore?
You got some responses.
I was like, I wonder what other people will say. And the reason why I wondered is I remember websites being a very divisive topic among startups throughout my early marketing career. It turned into a battle between founders, CMOs, engineers, the mid-funnel teams. It always ended up being an actual fight.
I'm like, who owns it? Who gets to touch it?
What goes on it?
How do you update it?
And like what philosophy should prevail? I was always very happy to not be a part of that. Like I was not in those conversations and I was like, this is fine. Frequently what I saw was it became a philosophical battle between principles of design, principles of growth marketing, and whatever the founder wanted. It usually involved them being precious in some way. Like, we can't A/B test this one phrase because it seems too markety. I don't want it to come across too markety. And we can't use this one word. This word is banned and we can't use it for some random reason that made no like actual business sense.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing too, especially in B2B and when you're like a smaller startup, odds are that a B2B website has enough volume to actually A/B test was always my biggest concern.
Yep.
Everyone wanted to run experiments and tests. And I'm like, it's not anywhere close to statistically significant based on the volume of page views that we get in any given week or month to be able to accurately do that. I do think the switch to a kind of PLG version of B2B helped that, right? Because if you do have a free option, you probably can drive more visits to your website and you're probably having a higher volume than like a traditional sales-led B2B function. It's also like folks are reading stuff and trying to do things that just actually won't work, or you're not going to get clear direction or data from it. How many times were there A/B tests and it was like 49% versus 51%? And you're like,
does it matter?
Have like a couple thousand page views and you're like, I guess we'll go with the 51%. It's so silly.
It also is like a bit time-based too. If you don't test that long enough, you could be dealing with a sort of recency trend or whatever. You're talking around volume of activity speaks to the meta disconnect between the startup funding model and how a startup should logically grow that we always talk about, which is, to me, a startup should be experimenting a lot for a while and gathering tons of information because you're starting off with very little, right? And especially where you're starting off with low volume, you need to bring more into the equation somehow to consider so you can figure out where the nuance is, where that unique opportunity is. But because they don't have the time to do that, and the types of growth metrics they're reporting on on a quarterly basis, some of them don't make sense.
Yeah.
Like they can show traction, but when it comes to marketing, it's like signals aren't valued. And so you're forced into this framework of test, result, decision on a very short timeline.
Yeah.
Which I think a scientist would be like, that's not how science
It's
works.
not valid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that too, if we're talking about like messaging experiments, there's so much lost where if you put an overemphasis on doing that on the website, you're actually not getting as clear of a signal as you could on sales calls or demos or a booth at a conference or talking to people, right? Like the light bulb that you can see go off in people's brains when you hit a good messaging soundbite or you have a clear, this is who we are, this is what we do thing. And you can test that so much quicker when you're doing it in front of a human being because you can see they light up or they lean in or whatnot. And on the website, all you're looking at is did they click or did they go further or did they? And it could be that your messaging on the website is actually really confusing. So they had to click to learn more.
That's a good point.
And not that it actually resonated really well and they understood what you did. That could actually be a bounce of somebody getting to your website and being like, great messaging. I get it now. I'm not the right time.
Yeah.
Bounce off. And the other one could be really confusing. And that's why they need to get more in depth. But that also could be a strategy, right? Is to get somebody to click a little bit deeper because they don't quite understand or they haven't figured out where to put you yet. So I'm not even saying that's bad, but I'm just saying so many times we have these logical fallacies of, I am going to use this metric to indicate this thing when that's not actually the right measurement of it, right?
Yeah. And over measuring human behavior, treating humans like data points too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like aggregate data is very helpful in the strategic process and in decision making. But the over reliance on it that you're talking about, the like leaning so far that you're treating humans like numbers or like, if this, then that's.
Yeah.
But humans aren't always the same. And I think this is where the community aspect is so much more strategic and why it always helped me with my marketing strategy so much because I got that nuance of encountering people both one-on-one and an aggregate in multiple different formats, right? It was like there's a Slack channel that we didn't own that all the customer support people were in at Help Scout. That was how things became sticky. That's how I launched things that worked, right?
Yeah.
It's because you do something online, then you bring it to the event, you record it there. These people are more bought in, they're sharing the message. And that to me, it's less reportable, like it's less quantifiable. But to your point, exactly, I'm like, that's
where it becomes the art and not the science, right? And if we over rely on the science of marketing, we're missing a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing, when I think that prompted this discussion of do websites even matter anymore, is back in your Help Scout days, my Envision days, it used to be that page views would then naturally fall into conversions in terms of clicks, in terms of signups, in terms of whatever. And you could predictably say, if we're going to drive more traffic to this website, we will increase all of those down funnel metrics, right?
Yep.
And now with the proliferation of social channels and micro groups and online community forums and things like that, a lot of that education that used to be, we'll get people to the website, we'll get them signed up for our newsletter or whatever it is, we'll write a bunch of content, we'll continue feeding it to them. And we know that the more we attract up funnel, that all of these other things are going to happen. What now we're seeing in the data analytics are people are hitting the website as a first time user and going to sign up. Now that just totally puts it on its head in terms of if we just drive more users to the website, that's not necessarily going to happen. The people are hitting there because they've self-educated off of our website, not off of our, you know what I mean?
Offsite.
In a place other than our website. Mm-hmm. And now they're coming and we're seeing them as a brand new hit that immediately goes to down funnel. And so what does that do?
Yep. It's like the customer journey. And I'm writing about this in my book. I'm like, it is not linear. It never has been. Like, just because somebody made a picture that it's linear and then they have that squiggly line over it that makes no sense. Like, that's not how it goes. It's not in that order. It's like a zigzag between those things. And to your point on the buying behavior changing, I think a lot of that is also due to there being more options, right? So there's just more different types of the same software available.
Oh, hell yeah.
And given the budget squeeze of the last 2 years, 22 and 23, on SaaS companies specifically, they're having to consider more, right? I'm pretty sure buying cycles have extended based on the experiences of the agencies and people that I talk to, is like they're just taking a lot longer to buy, including software. And so you need more than education now. You need that trust and that validation going in, because you're like, I only have so much. Like, I can't really afford to make a mistake with this.
Yeah.
I kind of need to know going in that I trust it. I was reading something recently about these review sites and how they're not doing as well. It had to do with this challenge of trust, right? And how there's so much more available because people are leaning into these niche communities and finding their tribes.
I saw the writing on the wall with those review sites. As soon as they started to monetize and it was pay to play, I'm like, it's only a matter of time where consumers of those websites that actually go to get that information catch on to the fact that this is all pay to play.
Yep.
Right. And that you can pay money to have them build a new category for you that then you get to be the superstar of. That just to me felt like,
I got a spam text message the other day from some company that said, hey, do you want to be featured as one of the like top something type of marketer on MSNBC or some whatever, some site? It's like, this placement costs $400. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, so I can just pay for it? And they'll be like, Devin's great,
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, that's that model. Just, I mean, I guess it worked for a while, but now it's like everyone knows, everyone caught on. And also, a lot of companies now make their own. This isn't even just like a now thing, but like they've been doing this for a while, but it still works, where it's like a company will just write, oh, the 10 best like biotech marketing agencies, and they put themselves on the list. I know a couple people who have done that, and like that brings in a ton of qualified inbound traffic because people aren't even paying attention to who the author is.
Yeah.
And just clicking on, like, they're including themselves in it. And I'm like, I'm like, if you could just do that or ask someone. I mean, it's crazy. I would love to be able to make a business just out of referring people to hire and any type of service resource, because I'm like, that's all I do now.
You need the personal vetting, right? And I think that's a huge thing of this movement towards, if we have all of these software startups, and to your point, it's just like software startups are a commodity now, point solutions, particularly like a tool that does one thing. There's anything that you can think of right now, there is a company that will do that individual point solution thing for you. And not just one company, there's probably 100 and then 50 more in beta, right? And so it is like, how do you find the one to use? I need an AI assistant to join my calls. There's millions of those, right? So you're going to use something that your friend uses or whatnot. And it's so much noisier now that people are naturally pulling back towards personal recommendations or people that have individual experience that you trust that is going to recommend that. And I think that's the piece that we have not, as marketers, really fully embraced yet. Of if we have a million competitors, the way to win is to get your champions to actually be talking about you and recommending you and advocating for you in those spaces where they're naturally going to be around other people like them.
Yeah, because that turns into your reputation.
Yeah.
That was what happened with animals, is eventually it's not about referrals. Word of mouth becomes the prevailing impression of the company, where they're like, oh, animals is the best. And that's the stuff that sticks. You can't manufacture that.
That's not an A/B test on the website, right?
No.
That's not driving more traffic to the website. That's doing like the actual deep work of marketing.
Yeah, and also there's 2 variances that I feel like do not get piled into this generic B2B marketing discussion that we as marketers kind of always have, which is different industries have different buyer behaviors and journeys, and so which you and I have talked about with your new job too, but
Yeah.
the biotech industry, Digital Elevator, I know the guy who runs that, and he does growth marketing for biotech companies. What a biotech company needs on their website in terms of pages and what goes on those pages is different from a traditional software marketing journey that you might see. And what their customers want to hear on the calls is different. Same with enterprise. The thing about enterprise is that it's more playbooky than the playbooks we're applying to the other types, especially when you get into these like giant corporations. There's like whole companies whose job, like procurement agencies that like help the company choose. And the networking structure is so like who you network with, when, how, like situation is completely different from a word of mouth type of that I would try to build for another, like a marketing or a customer support software.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, websites aren't even conversion mechanisms for, let's say, the biotech industry, where it's like, actually, it matters these certain product pages you have, and that's it.
Mhm.
And I think, like, again, especially on the enterprise side, I'm like, that's just a totally different paradigm where a lot of times they're not Googling what's the
No,
best software, you know?
Yeah. No, they're
And so,
going to their selection partner, right? They consult or they partner with a company who it's their job to do the RFPs and pull together the solutions and recommend a solution. But I would say if you pull out of marketing playbooks, it is the same thing. We need to identify our stakeholders, right? We need to understand how people make decisions. We need to map where those audiences are. We need to build relationships with them so we're known and liked, right? And then we need to facilitate any information to them that they can use in that circumstance. And so I would say it's ultimately fundamentally the same activities. It's just we miss it when we're too tactical in the okay, marketing is social media and websites and blah blah blah, you know? But it's
yeah.
fundamentally the same thing. We just need to map how people are making decisions and market to those people. And that could be your website and it could not be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Should we like should we talk about some of the
Yeah.
I was really excited. So I said, I'm curious what other people think. I'm gonna post this on LinkedIn and see. And I was really excited about this because I am generally not usually like clickbaity, like, I'm not usually asking the binary question.
Yeah.
I can be very forward and direct, but I'm not usually like, I think this and not that. And so I was a little nervous and excited. And I said, do websites matter anymore in B2B specifically? And I said, the social proof from logos and case studies seem outdated, practically invisible in their ubiquity. Buyer behavior influenced more behind the scenes from peer recommendations, etc.
Oh, wait, let me share a little brief story about this too.
Yeah.
So the other day, I had one of the companies that I used to advise reach out, and they were like, I'm between these two, I believe they were agencies. And I looked on one of the agency's website and I saw a company that I know, like a head of marketing there. So I was like, oh, like I can do a back channel reference for you. And it was so funny because it was like I reached out to the person and it was like, oh, we actually haven't used them in a while and blah, blah, blah. But they were still using the logo. So this is also the thing about like logos on websites and like case studies and testimonials is how often have you churned off of a service or an agency and you haven't gone back and said, hey, and I want you to take my customer testimonial down, or hey, you can't use my logo anymore. And how often, as you as a marketer, do you understand that maybe a company has churned, but you're like, but that's a good logo. We're going to keep it up for a little while.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I've been one of those too.
Yeah.
I actually had a similar experience very recently too, where someone that came to me and was considering 3 different options for a company to bring on. And they asked me just for my hot take. I looked at them and I said, "Look, all of these would work. Here's my rank order and why." I said, "If you want just an answer, if you're just like, Devin, pick a name." I said, "This is the one I would go with and why." And it actually ended up being the one that I knew I didn't have personal experience with,
Mm.
but I thought was a better fit in terms of their model and relating to the person who was bringing them on. I'm like, "Oh, they're better. I think they're a better match for you." And I think that that's more important than me knowing, they have a good reputation generally.
Yeah.
I said, "But if you're really asking, I think you should go with this one over here who you haven't even talked to." And that's what they ended up going with. Oh, actually, I think we're going to talk about this in our next episode, but influence versus fame.
Mm.
The amount of times that I am that person
Yeah.
in terms of, people deciding between people to hire or whatever, it's like that is happening. And
And
it
again,
can't be
that doesn't
measured.
show up in a sales cycle. Like, how would you ever do a win-loss analysis of that? Of, hey,
And
they
it's like,
reached out to their friend and their friend actually recommended an agency or a solution that wasn't even in our shortlist, and that's how we lost. How do you
and
protect
there's,
against that?
yeah. And that I think, that's where the community piece comes in, is if you are building a strong community around your brand and you're also doing a good job, right? Like your service or product also
Yeah,
has
your
to be
product
good.
has to talk the talk.
Yeah. 'Cause, like, I have for example, there are some agencies that only a couple that I really believe in and, like, recommended already, and they're like, "Do you want a referral?" Yes, they are a great agency objectively, but
Yeah.
based on how much money you have or the specific type of marketing you're really leaning into here, like, I may not recommend them, not because they're not good, but because they're just not the exact right fit.
Yeah.
But I only have a handful total that I recommend because I'm doing this mostly out of the goodness of my heart. Like, I don't make a lot of money from, like, most of the time it's, whatever. And so it's like, I'm not going to research every agency out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick from the ones I know
Yeah.
and always go back to those agencies, people, companies over and over. And so I think from a brand standpoint, being able to identify who those influencers are and realizing that they're not always influencers in the traditional sense.
They might not even be on the org chart of that organization, and it could be that there's a completely different person influencing that decision.
Yeah, and it's like that's the same thing around like the like B2B finally caught on like 5-10 years later that are on like influencer marketing. But again, they're starting off with people who have huge followings. I'm like, "Yeah, but you and I have seen this too." Like the bigger the audience, the harder it is to keep your audience engaged. Like if you
Yeah.
look at the posts that I publish on LinkedIn, it's a lot of the same people over and over again.
Yeah.
We know the people. I'm like, "Oh, that person follows the podcast because they were on this other thing." Like, or this person, this is part of my like Slack group that I'm a part of, and I know these like whatever. And so it's harder to do it this way, but being able to find the actual influencers and then think outside the box in terms of what that relationship looks like.
Yeah.
My friend Christine at arc.dev, they were mostly focused on helping you hire talent, dev talent, but now they've branched out, they're dipping into marketing. And her and I did like a webinar and an asset together. And I was like, "Look, I really need help because people ask me for hiring recommendations all the time. It takes like, it is a lot of work for me to do that no
Yeah.
matter what. And it's important to me to get it right because if I, for
Yeah.
every
It's your
wrong."
reputation on the line too.
Yeah. And I was like, it'd actually be great. But I was like, I could use a supporting tool like you to be able to make this easier for me. But I also don't want it to seem like my recommendations are insincere if I'm always using you.
Yeah.
And so how can we like, I'm even more careful about it. I was like, if we were to do some sort of like paid whatever thing, I need to set it up so that people still trust me because I am a actual influencer, not a media influencer.
I almost want to call it like a shadow influencer or something. I think back to a time that I had my friends that are like super cool internet entrepreneurs, and they were like traveling and they stayed with me, and I introduced them to Spindrift, like the seltzer water. And they were obsessed with it. So then they had bought one and were talking about it. Like they had done like a live stream and were talking about it. And then Spindrift sent them like a pallet of Spindrifts. And I'm like, it was me. Shadow influencer.
Yep. Yeah.
They're getting all the credit. Like I was the one.
Yeah.
But how much in the B2B process are there those shadow influencers who are probably never hitting your website and might not ever know about your offer or whatever if you don't get in front of them in a way that feels natural, and then set up an incentive structure where both the company and the influencer, shadow influencer, can retain a sense of that like trust.
Yeah.
So let's read some of the answers on your LinkedIn post. I'll read Kate's. Kate said, I think websites are important for sheer brand ownership. So we're not 100% reliant on social sites we don't own and control. I have this stupid idea where our website is simply a logo, a tagline, and an AI agent, nothing else. So we can serve you the proof or information you need and not throw up everything all over potential buyers. There's lots of flaws to this plan, which is why we haven't done it yet. I think that is really interesting, right? If you think about websites and things becoming hyper personalized and the rise of AI agents, it could be that eventually that's what it is, where somebody jumps in and they ask a question of, okay, I see what your tagline is, but can you do XYZ thing? Or even for like B2B or enterprise software, hey, I have this RFP. I'm going to upload it to you right now. Can you give me all the answers? And we could remove all of that work just using answers from an AI agent based on like the RFP process is the stupidest, most archaic thing that has ever existed.
Nobody
that
likes
still
it.
happens. You know what I mean?
Well, also, like, I think it also depends on the buyer being the type of person that would value an interaction like that.
Yeah.
And also, that interaction isn't really net new because chatbots have been on websites forever and they already have the ability to answer. Even when I was at Help Scout, we had a thing that would like answer with blog posts or support document or whatever. That already exists and has existed for a while. I think there's a large cohort of people that value an AI interaction to just like get the answer that the website isn't providing. But my pushback on that is like, if it's that transactional, right? If they have these like transactional questions, why wouldn't you just put that on your website somewhere?
Yeah, could be.
You know what I mean? But either way.
I do think I agree with you that I think that the user and customer behavior would have to mature enough to then be at a point where that is the preferred solution rather than let me poke around on the website. Actually, there was a company that I took a demo from to give them feedback. One of these hyper personalization that they can pull from information about you as a viewer of the website, scrape a bunch of information, and then personalize a website to an umpteenth degree using AI and blah, 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 blah. And my pushback, it was like, why wouldn't you use this as like a head of your company? And I'm like, honestly, my buyer would probably be freaked out about that. You know what I mean? Who I know my buyer is not going to be like, cool new technology. They're going to be like, how the heck do you know this? And then they're going to spiral into, I need to lock down my security and I need to like remove my personal information from the internet. And it's not going to be helpful in a way for a different buyer. They might be like, oh, this must be a super innovative company because they know this about me. It would actually like strike fear and anxiety in their hearts. And so I'm like, that's why I wouldn't use it, is because it's not right for my buyer experience. They don't expect that and they're not going to like it.
Also, remember that semaphore article that we talked about in one of our previous episodes where the journalist was basically saying, this is a good time for CEOs to zig while others are zagging.
Yeah.
And so my challenge to AI is, if you're a company and every single person around you is currently, which they are, leaning into AI, imagine like humans become the differentiator.
Yeah.
And if you're in an industry where that is valued, where people prefer human interactions, are delighted by it, then that's more of an opportunity for you than AI.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one from my former boss, CMO, Suneet Bhatt, who I love. Suneet may be like the most strategic as a marketer. Like he taught me a lot because he was nice and smart. Okay, he said slightly different positioning from my point of view. Websites matter, they just aren't differentiators. It's the difference between table stakes and innovation. A bad website can disqualify, a good website only serves as a lily pad in the customer journey. Ideally, one where one doesn't fall through the surface, being lost forever. And I was like, yeah, that's,
So
yeah,
poetic.
I know. I'm like, yeah. My response, I was like, Yellow Pages, you named it.
Speaking of another really good metaphor, Christina Carson said, websites, the turkey at Thanksgiving dinner. No one actually likes turkey or has the perfect way to cook it, but without it, the meal would feel incomplete. Your sides, social, podcast, whatever other channel, are what your guests are really there for, but you still have to eat the turkey because those are the rules.
I did not see that. Oh my
I just like
God.
that at the end, it's like she almost runs out of, she's because those are the rules. You have to eat the turkey.
Oh my gosh. This is, yes.
Oh, I like Dan Sanchez said, I certainly still devour the website before I spend my money or my employers. I also go watch YouTube videos of customers using the thing too. We've seen that be really beneficial at the company I'm at now. Is that about a year ago, we created really like a content facilitation process throughout the entire organization. So engineers and QA engineers build short videos based on the features that they're working on or what's getting launched. And then that goes up on our YouTube. And we've had a lot of anecdotal feedback of customers and prospects saying it's so refreshing because a lot of the competitors or point solution competitors of ours don't let you see the product until you're a qualified sales lead. And then maybe you get a demo or maybe you get an instance that you can log into. But the idea that we have all this public facing content showing exactly how our product works and how to configure it has been a game changer. So
Actually, that lends to a comment that Christopher Penn posted that I thought was really interesting. He said, if for no other reason, B2B websites matter for AI companies to crawl, ingest, and add to their training data sets about who you are and what you do. No website, no content, no AI model knows who you are.
yeah.
That, on a very practical level,
Yeah, you're not doing it for SEO anymore. You're doing it for AI search results.
well, you're doing it for both still.
I know.
Because
Sorry.
SEO is not dead. I was reading an article the other day, I don't remember where, about how if you're getting organic traffic from search and you're purposeful about it and you're maintaining that, like if you stop, you'll lose like 10 to 20% of your traffic. Like it doesn't maintain on its own, right? Like it won't just, if you just like stop tending to that garden. But it is for both, and increasingly, obviously, long term. But the AI, the cycle for AI's development is 5-10 years to make these big replacement style changes. And so he's right. Like in the meantime, you want to be part of that, the very least, right? Like you want to be showing up in AI results because of how many people are using that for search now.
Yeah.
I feel like every time you and I go to record an episode these days, it ends up being mostly about something that seems completely different, but is actually very related. And I think that is a good thing in that I think we're finally getting to the kernel of like what these issues are.
Yeah.
And the kernel always comes back to the same few things, which is a janky funding model for SaaS companies that thwarts growth of actual companies, the ongoing and never-ending need for a community-first growth strategy that doesn't rely solely or majority on this one-to-one mechanical measurement, and probably something else.
And the fact that we talk past each other by saying words that we have different meanings about, that then we never have a productive conversation because we all think that we know what we're talking about, but the other person doesn't receive the information in the same way.
Isn't it crazy too? The solution is so simple, but it's never going to happen because structurally right now, and it's actually going to get worse this year because even VC funds are consolidating among these few kind of like major players that fund the same people and types of companies. So it's like, it's actually gonna get worse
Yeah.
before it gets better. But like the solution is right here. I'm like, just think for yourself, take risks, and experiment.
I would say always go one step higher. Anytime that it's, oh, we have to do this because this is the way it's always done. Think about why it used to be done that way, what purpose it actually served, and then what other things you could also do to serve that purpose. And you're going to have a much smarter marketing strategy than just, we have to do this to the website, or we have to focus on this with the website, or whatever other marketing thing it is. Think about why that used to work. What human need, what human behavior did that actually identify or solve for? And then think about the world you actually live in today and what people are doing. And then go build a marketing plan on that.
I have no notes. That is perfect. If you see a should or a have to anywhere, that is time to ask a why question, and make sure that the why includes, if you're taking it externally, make sure that company is at all related to your business. Because if it's not, then
that too. Yeah. I feel like as an individual advisor and like a solopreneur, there was the circumstance where I realized my website doesn't matter. It's all relationship driven. Like I should have it for, I think somebody wrote like a digital business card. It's important to have one, but that's not where my conversion happened.
No, my website was the full first year. It was just like, whatever. I did a redesign on it for other reasons because I wanted those
fun.
Yeah. But I'm like, I don't make any effort to send people there besides like making it available in profiles.
Yeah. All right. It's been fun as always.
This is great. Okay, y'all. That's a wrap. Thank you as always for listening.
We'll be back next week. And just remember, you're doing great. You're doing great.
30% of you are doing great. The rest, you got to get your shit together. Come on.
You know which side you're on this week.
You know.
You know. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
I was so congested. Like as soon as I put my face on the massage table, I like got recongested because it's like pressing against you or whatever. And then it was like I had like a single drip of booger like fall to the floor. Like this room is dark. Hopefully the massage therapist doesn't see that I'm like dripping out my nose.
When I get massages, I kind of feel like shit the next day.
Yeah.
Because it like brings so much stuff up.
Yeah, you got to drink a lot of water because it's like all of the stuff that's trapped in your muscles gets released again.